Welcome back, all of you diorama makers, nookers, terrain builders, people making miniature worlds. Dayland with another random making encounter. This video is going to be the Haunted Nook after party. The Nook deconstructed, what's in the box? Basically, folks keep asking, can you give us a little bit more insight in how you made that all come together? And so that's the purpose of this video. So we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into some optics and things like that we'll try to keep not overly complicated, but hopefully helpful as you think about how you might use this effect, this Pepper's Ghost effect, to create cool worlds and these ghostly apparitions or transparencies, things floating in space. So this is, like I said, a Pepper's Ghost illusion. And if you want to jump on the interwebs and search for that, that's what we're trying to accomplish. Basically, it just involves a couple things. It involves a brightly lit object, or in our case, a bright high contrast video source, and a transparent reflective material that is between sort of the viewer and some objects or something beyond. So something between the viewer and additional things in the distance. So for our video source, I ended up using a small MP4 player. This one was a Timku MP4 player, MP3 player. I have a video on that talking about it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'll put the link up here, maybe in the description, link up here. But the bottom line is this was compact, pretty good price point, fairly good screen size, pretty bright, good resolution, and I just like that it was very self-contained. There wasn't really any fussing with it. No buttons, it's all touch screen, so no external buttons except power and volume. So just kind of was a nice thing to experiment with. Really compact, fits well. So Timku, but there are others out there. This is not a Timku plug. Transparent material, I used a piece of polycarbonate, thin polycarb. We'll talk a little bit about what drove my decision here in a minute or two or 10. Now, a couple things we want to think about. We've got our little eye of Sauron here to remind us that what we're really trying to do is always be thinking about the eye line, what our viewer can see. So bottom line, we're trying to trick people into thinking there's more going on than there is. The box is bigger, the space is deeper, there's more beyond the edges of the Nook. So we're creating a big world in a little box that we put on a shelf. And so we're always wanting to be aware of what our viewer's eye line is. Now, with that in mind, we want to think a little bit about how light reflects off of things, because there are a lot of those tricks involve mirrors or reflective surfaces like this Pepper's Ghost illusion. So I'm going to do a little bit of a drawing here with my sticks. If we think about this skewer being an imaginary line perpendicular to our reflective surface, and this could be a piece of acrylic that's transparent, it could be a mirror. If a little photon of light, a little beam of light comes in and strikes this flat mirror, the angle that it's striking in relation to this perpendicular line, the light reflected will be the same angle. So if this is really acute, an acute angle, I do remember, I think, some words from geometry, and I think I'm using that word correctly. That will be reflected, no pun intended, in the angle of the light being bounced back. So if this is 30 degrees, say, that light coming in relative to this imaginary perpendicular line, the light reflected back will be 30 as well. Now, if you think about this logically, if we pretend that this is a mirror and we're looking at it, if we're standing over here and we're looking in the mirror, what we're seeing is something sitting over kind of off the screen, off of the mirror. If we start to look and stare straight into the mirror, eventually we close that angle down and we're just looking straight back at ourselves. Now, I did not do any massive angle calculations for this project. It's a lot of eyeballing, but what the whole point there is you want to be thinking about how the viewer is looking into the reflective surface, what we're trying to reflect, and realize that all of the angles are a little variable. So it does give us room to manipulate things. Okay, enough of that. Now let's talk about the actual Nook itself. So this is a generally scale drawing. It's about to size. It's 4 inches wide, 11 inches deep. It's a little deep for a Nook. It probably should be less than that. This doesn't really fit on a lot of book shelves. I'd probably stick to more like 9 inches-ish, but I was trying to cram a lot of stuff in this one. So there's an 1.5 inches of space here in the back for electronics and other wires and things. There's also another illusion in the back where there's an opening, a doorway, and a mirror that is reflecting the door that's sitting over here to make it look like the hallway continues on into the back. This could have been eliminated and the electronic space could be compressed, or they could be hidden in other places. So this could be actually really the depth of this Nook could be compressed quite a bit. But I was really just trying to cram a ton of stuff into it. At one point I wanted to have an infinity mirror in there. Yeah, a little over ambitious. Now the actual player just slots in from the top and slides into a holder, and it comes in and out to recharge and to start it and play it. And so it is really a removable thing. It's not plug and play, set and forget. It actually needs to be recharged, turned on. I can't control it remotely. That's the one downside to this. And having it drop in from the top is actually kind of it's not a great solution. I'm sure you could probably come up with a better one, but that's kind of where I landed. So this little red footprint is the size of the little holder that I made out of polystyrene. Again, I dropped my reflective material vertically straight down into the Nook itself. Now, these little black sticks are going to represent walls. They will be playing the part of walls today. And so what we wanted to think about was, if this is my eye line, I don't want to be able to see the player. So I have to be able to fit my reflective 45, in this case, 45 degree. I want to be able to not see the edge. I don't want to see the edge of the player. And so I need to hide it. So I needed to hide it using some walls. Now, I also needed to have enough opening here so that I wasn't just having this tiny little doorway and you couldn't see anything beyond it. So the trick here was to maximize the space that I could view into the Nook itself while hiding the player. And that was kind of the big driver. So I tried a bunch of different things. So obviously you can do things like you can angle walls and player. So, you know, I could maybe do something where it's sort of, you know, this kind of thing was going on. And then I could adjust the mirror, the reflective acrylic to make sure that it was kind of coming out and bouncing straight back. I tried a bunch of different things like this, and each of them sort of had a fatal flaw. In this case, having a front room for this haunted room that had this weird angled wall was weird, just weird. Houses aren't built this way. Maybe if I wanted to give it sort of a spooky kind of, you know, tilted and distorted, I'd need to do that in more places than just this front wall. Maybe if I did that throughout with the angle of the doors and the walls and ceilings, that could be cool. But for a more standard room, this was kind of creating a weird space. It was eating into the available space in the front, and it was creating a bunch of strange geometry that wasn't very helpful. I could have just sort of straightened this out and tilted the player so that I was still sort of maintaining that, hiding it in the eye line. But the reality is, if you think about pivoting this just a little bit, I'm really not gaining a lot of hiding by just tipping it this tiny little amount. So if I tipped it like this and had it, you know, sort of that way, I gain a lot of opportunity here, but then I have this big player cutting across my Nook. So it turns out that kind of the simplest solution was just to stick it to the side of the Nook. Make sure that the line coming off of that corner, that edge, and I have a frame going around this, so I want to take that into consideration because what people can see here is very different from what people can see 5/8 of an inch over to the left. So I wanted to, so then I could just maximize that wall to maintain the most opening here. And then because this is flat against the wall and it's sort of perpendicular to the viewer, my reflective material can be at a 45-degree angle. The only other thing that I needed to really think about was how far or how close this reflective material was. You can see that if this is sort of a light coming off of it, look at where it's touching the blue. That means that the light is basically reflecting back here, okay? If I push this reflective material back, now that same center point is way over here. Now, obviously I could run into some issues where there's elements on the screen here that are hitting where there is no reflective material. But the one thing to think about is you want to sort of figure out how you're moving your reflective material so that what is center on your screen or positioned on your screen is positioned in where you want people to see it. So kind of, you know, really kind of worked out that just about right on the edge. And I could play with the angle just a tiny bit to tweak that. It doesn't have to be spot on 45. The more you get off on the angle, what it will do is it will tend to squish your image a little bit. But I could play with that a little bit, but it was important to figure out how far back, how far forward as well. I also had some additional constraints with the back wall. That's how I determined the geometry, and it sort of ended up something like this. Front wall, door, mounted to the side, 45-degree angle on the reflective material, and then a wall in the back. So that's the geometry. Now, another important design driver is you do want to have things in the back. You want to be able to see through the acrylic or the clear material into the Nook beyond your reflection to give that, really drive that sense of transparency home. If you just have a sort of a dark empty space in the back, what you could really end up with is looking like there's something that's actually sitting back flat against it. You need some objects to give that sense of depth. So lighting and available space is important back here as well. So I didn't want to actually angle the reflective material a little bit differently because there's no reason why you can't actually project up or down. Like I could have it tipped like this, project down from the top and reflect back. The problem there is now I'm sort of creating all sorts of space constraints and I'm angling and cutting across the walls, and you know, weird things started to happen that were less desirable. So keeping this back area free and open for a door over here, some objects over here, was really an important design consideration as well. You also want to make sure that you're illuminating the back area well enough that you can again see the objects back there without sort of blowing out the actual transparency, the transparent reflected image. So the brighter your source over here, the brighter this object, the stronger the reflection, the more lighting you can get away with behind your reflective panel as well. But you do want to have some illumination back there. It just really drives that sense of transparency home, and having objects that you're looking through the ghost at helps really, again, create that sense of depth. Okay, so that's sort of the geometry. Let's now talk a little bit about the reflective material. And we're going to jump back into optics again a little bit, optical reflection. It's not an optics video. I have no idea what I was talking about with optics. I just know kind of how things bounce around a little bit. If we think about this as being our piece of acrylic, polycarb, Plex, whatever we're using, and it's zoomed in so we can see it in cross section. As our little photon of light comes screaming across and it strikes the front of the acrylic, the transparent material, it will reflect back at us at some angle, as we discussed earlier. It will then go on its merry way and continue through the material because it's transparent, and it'll strike the back side, internally, the back of the material, and it will reflect at us at some angle. And what I have not drawn, but what it will continue to do is go on its merry way through the object, through the material, because it's transparent. Now, what we really care about are these two little arrows, because what this shows is as that light has reflected off the front surface and internally off of what we'll call the back surface, that same photon has now split into two, and they're bouncing both at our eyeballs. The thickness of the material, the greater the thickness of the material, if we use our Pythagorean theorem, which I actually don't even remember, I'm sorry, Mr. Hauser, that was a long time ago. I was even bad back then. That distance is actually, that amount of separation is determined by the thickness of the material. The greater the thickness, the greater the separation. And in our case, the result is a double image. Now, for things like text, lines, things that are super crispy, that double image is really, really noticeable and very distinct. For things like our floating, diaphanous, gauzy ghost, it just looks like blur. It just looks like a fuzzy image from an image that's already kind of fuzzy to begin with. So it's becoming overly fuzzy. So what does that mean? It means that we want to use the absolute thinnest possible material we can find. It needs to be rigid enough that it doesn't start to get kind of funhouse mirror on us and curve and warble and warp. So it needs to be flat, but it needs to be super duper thin. Thinner, the better. Now, what I was able to find was something that's sort of in the realm of about a 1/16 of an inch polycarbonate. Anything that you can find that's below sub 1/8 inch, 1/16, 32nd of an inch, sub 1/16 of an inch is really gonna be ideal for this. I think polystyrene, polycarbonate, or polystyrene and acrylics probably get to be a little brittle and not readily available. But be on the lookout for thin, rigid materials that will give you a really good result. Perfectly flat, so you don't get distortion, but and rigid enough that it's easy to mount them, but thin enough that you're not going to end up with this double image issue. All right, that's kind of really it. The geometry, we kind of had that sussed out a little bit, sorted out. Keep them at 45, put some walls in there. Don't try and put everything in the box that you can. Watch your Eye of Sauron eye lines. Thin material. Control your lighting. That's kind of what it all is. We're under 20 minutes. I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to bring it home. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped shed a little light into the dark, gloomy recesses of the Haunted Nook. Helped you understand the geometry, what was going on. Be sure to hit that like button if this was helpful. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Check out all of my stuff on Instagram, all of that good stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back really soon.